The first sign that something was wrong was the key. I slid it into my front door at 6:18 on a Thursday evening, already thinking about the leftover pasta in my refrigerator and whether I had enough energy to answer emails after dinner. The key went in. It turned, but the door didn't open. I tried again. Nothing. For a few seconds, I honestly thought I was using the wrong key. Then I noticed a new deadbolt. My old lock had been silver. This one was matte black. I stared at it, feeling a strange pressure build in my chest. I knocked. Mom? No answer. I knocked harder. Dad? Still nothing. Then I heard footsteps. My father's voice came through the door. Go home, Claire. I froze. I looked at the house number, then at the address printed on my work bag, then back at the door. Go home, I said. Dad, I am home. There was a long silence. Then my mother spoke. You shouldn't have come back yet. That sentence scared me more than the changed lock, because my parents had never spoken to me like that before, not even when we argued, not even when they were angry. They had always acted as if this house was partly theirs because they had helped me buy it, but they had never actually locked me out of it. I stepped back from the porch. What did you do? My father didn't answer. I could hear my mother whispering something to him. Then he said, We're handling a family matter. I almost laughed. By changing the locks? You'll understand later. No, I won't. I knocked again. Open the door. My father's voice became harder. Claire, don't make this worse. And that was when I realized something. They weren't improvising. They had planned this. Someone had purchased that lock. Someone had installed it. Someone had decided exactly when I would be away from home, and my parents had been waiting for me to discover it. I stood on that porch for nearly 10 minutes, trying to understand how the people who raised me had decided I no longer deserved to walk through my own front door. Then my mother finally opened it. She didn't step aside. She stood in the doorway like a guard. Behind her, I could see my living room. My furniture was still there. My photographs were still on the wall. My plants were still sitting beside the windows. Nothing looked stolen. That somehow made it worse. What is going on? I asked. Mom folded her arms. You've been under a lot of stress. I stared at her. What does that have to do with my house? Dad appeared behind her. This isn't just your house anymore. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? He looked away. Things have changed. I remembered the mortgage, the property taxes, the insurance. Every payment I had made since I bought the house 3 years earlier. I had put nearly everything I had into it. My parents had helped me with the down payment, but the loan was mine at least. That's what I had always believed. What changed? I asked. Mom's expression tightened. Your brother needs somewhere to live. There it was. Ethan. My younger brother. The person my parents had spent my entire childhood rescuing. When Ethan lost his job, Dad paid his rent. When Ethan damaged his car, Mom helped pay for repairs. When Ethan started a business that failed, my parents called it a learning experience. When I struggled, they called it being independent. I looked past Mom. Did you give my house to Ethan? No, she said quickly. But Dad didn't look at me. That was enough. I felt something inside me go completely still. You changed the locks so Ethan could move in? Mom sighed. He's your brother. And I'm your daughter. We're trying to help the family. I looked at the new lock. By locking me out. You've always been difficult about money, Mom said. That sentence hurt. Not because it was true. Because it wasn't. I had spent years being careful with money precisely because I knew nobody would rescue me if I failed. I worked full-time. I paid my bills. I had never asked my parents to cover my mortgage. And now they were standing inside my house, telling me I was selfish for wanting access to it. I pulled out my phone. Fine. I'm calling a locksmith. Dad's expression changed. No, I stopped. What? You can't. Why? He hesitated. Then Mom stepped forward. Because you don't own the entire property anymore. The words hit me harder than the locked door. What did you say? Dad finally looked at me. Your situation isn't what you think it is. I wanted to demand an explanation. Instead, I asked the only question that mattered. Then whose name is on the deed? Neither of them answered. And suddenly I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. The day I bought the house, the bank paperwork, the closing documents, my father's insistence that I let him look over everything. At the time, I had thought he was being protective. Now I wasn't so sure. I left without another word. Not because I was giving up, because I knew I needed evidence before I confronted them again. I drove to a hotel near my office and sat in the parking lot for almost an hour. My hands were shaking. I opened my laptop. I pulled up my mortgage account. The loan was still active. My name was there. Claire Morgan, borrower. I stared at the screen. If I was still responsible for the mortgage, how could my parents claim I no longer own the house? Then I remembered the closing documents. I searched through old digital files. Nothing. I checked my email. Nothing. Then I called the title company. The woman who answered asked for the property address. I gave it to her. There was a pause. Are you the owner? Yes. Another pause. Can I ask why you're calling? Because my parents changed the locks. Silence. Then she said something that made my entire body go cold. Miss Morgan, I think you need to speak with an attorney. I sat completely still. Why? I can't discuss the file without verifying a few things. What things? She lowered her voice. There's an agreement attached to the property record that you may not be aware of. My heart began pounding. What kind of agreement? I really can't explain that over the phone. I wrote down the name of the attorney she recommended. Then I hung up. For the first time that night, the panic began to turn into something else. Suspicion. I called my best friend, Natalie. She answered immediately. Are you okay? No, I told her everything. She was quiet for several seconds. Then she asked, did your parents ever help you with the down payment? Yes. How much? About $40,000. And did you sign anything when they gave it to you? I thought about it. I signed something. What? I don't remember. That answer bothered me. So I searched my old files again. This time I found a folder labeled Home. Inside were tax documents, insurance records, mortgage statements, and a scanned copy of my closing disclosure, but there was another file, one I didn't recognize. It was called Family Contribution Agreement. I opened it. The document was dated 3 years earlier. My father's name appeared on it. So did mine. I read the first page, then the second. My breathing became shallow. The money my parents had given me wasn't simply a gift. It had been described as a contribution tied to the property. But that wasn't the part that frightened me. The final page contained a clause I had completely forgotten. My father had insisted it was just paperwork for the bank. I had signed it without reading carefully. I kept scrolling. Then I saw the sentence that changed everything. My parents weren't listed as owners, but they had been granted a specific financial interest connected to the house, and that explained why they suddenly believed they had power. They hadn't changed the locks because they thought I was weak. They had changed them because they believed they had a legal foothold. But there was another page. A page with an amendment. The amendment was dated 2 months after I bought the house. I didn't remember signing it, and my signature was not there. Instead, there was a notation. Executed pursuant to separate agreement. I stared at those words. Separate agreement? What separate agreement? I called the attorney. He answered on the third ring. I explained everything. He asked me to email the documents. 20 minutes later, he called back. His tone had changed. Claire, your parents may have misunderstood what this agreement gives them. I sat upright. What do you mean? They may have a financial interest. Can they lock me out? No, the word came instantly. No. Not based on this document. My heart started pounding again. Then why are they acting like they own the place? I don't know yet. He paused. But there's something else. What? The agreement references a recorded property instrument, meaning there's a document attached to the property record that could tell us exactly what your father believed he had. I swallowed. Can you get it? I already requested it. That night, I barely slept out at T7:42 the next morning. My father called. I almost didn't answer. When I did, he didn't say hello. Claire, you need to stop digging. I stared at the ceiling. Why? Because this is going to hurt your brother. You locked me out of my home. We were trying to protect him. From what? He didn't answer. I waited. Finally, he said, from losing everything. I sat up. What does Ethan have to do with my house? Another silence. Then Dad said something that made my blood run cold. Ask yourself why we had to do this now. The call ended. I immediately called my attorney. He had already received the property records. Claire, he said, I think we found the reason. What? Your parents aren't just trying to move Ethan into the house. I waited. They're trying to prevent the property from being sold. My stomach tightened. I wasn't planning to sell it. I know. Then why would they care? Because someone else may have been planning to. Who?